Do it.
All right. It's 10 o'clock. We will call the meeting. And discussion possible action to excuse any committee members' absence. Well, actually, there's no. We do roll call.
Can you,
Lee, Mike, Ryan,
here.
Randy,
Here.
Ressa.
This is almost.
Is there?
Yeah.
Stephanie,
Yeah.
Condolin.
Here.
Okay. And Teresa emailed me. So I think she. This is what I'm trying.
We can go through some of this other stuff. Hopefully she'll hop on. So discussion possible action to excuse committee member absences. I don't know if we have any reasons for an absence. Any there? Ms. Vanessa, how?
Okay. Morning. So this is the meeting. I'm going to say all the things I say every meeting. Helpful if you've got your camera on. We can see you and it just works better. If you're not a committee member, you can go ahead and turn your camera off. It's helpful to mute during your, I say that, and I want those who are committee members to be, free to unmute and speak. You can also raise your hand. There's like the little hand button and you can raise it. Just don't forget to unraise it. And you don't need to, in this room, no one needs to yell, right, to pick up the mic. It's a pretty good mic. But if you're, towards the back and you're soft spoken, maybe a little bit. I don't know if anyone is soft spoken on this committee. But that would be the advice I have. And that's really it. That's the.
All right. So remarks from the chair. Nothing too important. Jennifer wanted me to remind you that if you want CE credit, please make sure you sign in the sign-in sheet there by the front door. We can get that. I think it's up to 4 hours per renewal period. If I'm not mistaken.
Right. For in-person only.
For in-person only. Yep. If you're online, too bad. All right. Ratification of the minutes of the January 16th meeting. Those were sent out a while back. The minutes that were there. Any modifications that need to be made? If there are not, I would entertain a motion to ratify those minutes. Motion is made by Mike.
Second.
Second made. And don't need to vote on that, so we will consider those ratified. General comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items. Do we have any of those? None? Doing something wrong if we don't have general comments.
Shannon's slacking over there.
Were you on vacation last month? What happened? All right, reports from subcommittees. Education, Mr. Brian Carroll.
I'm SOP. Try again.
This is why it was messed up.
That's why he was late.
I said that to him earlier today. I was like, are you?
It's my fault. I apologize.
All right.
Keep him on his toes.
Yeah. Just make sure you know me.
So we did have a meeting on April 4th and yes, I was a little late. But main items of discussion were the education for the apprentice license, the elimination of the real estate inspector license, and some stuff about the Texas practicum. And I know all three of those are going to be discussed in the meeting, so I won't get into that, but that's basically what we discussed.
All right. SOP.
We virtually on Monday, April 8th, we talked about the review process of the SOP and the timeline, discussed some of the items had been tabled since the last review of the SOP. We kind of talked about the review on a section by section basis, which is what's kind of been done in the past. We're also looking at some ways to best engage the inspector population. And we were talking about possibly a survey to send out to all the licensed inspectors to say, hey, you have an issue, flag it. That way we could get some data to see, hey, are there hot button items that are widely being complained about or commented upon, so we could look at evaluating either changes or edits to those, education, whatever it may need to be. And our next scheduled meeting is June 21st at 9 a.m. virtually. That concludes my report.
So with that, it's the review process is always a long and tedious one. Getting any SOPs or rule changes, as we were discussing before the meeting, it never happens quickly. But we want to encourage everybody to have as much input as possible, because once we do go through this cycle, it takes a few years for the next cycle to start. So if we could, in our daily, endeavors, we all go to different meetings and whatnot, where other people in the industry are there. If we can just kind of open that up and remind them, hey, if there are changes you guys want to see done, throw them out there. Let's hear those suggestions. They can send them to any of you as committee members. They can send them to the general counsel, email as well, and make them matter of public record. But the more input we get, the better. The more input we get now, the less fight we get on the backside when some of these things go through and people go, why are you changing that when it's been going on for 2 years, which ends up happening. So cool. All right, staff reports. Executive, Ms. Chelsea.
I will start us with a few small updates, not related to inspectors specifically, but just related to TREIC. The first is our ramp project, which is we are in the process of implementing a new back-end database. It doesn't feel like a major thing, but it is major. We have a lot of staff who, on top of their normal work, are working to make sure that this is done well and thoughtfully. It's about a $5 million project that will affect every division of our agency. So we expect a fall-ish rollout of that. We don't have a final date on that yet. There's a lot of work left to be done, but the main thing on the user side is that we expect there to be more opportunities for self-service. We've all been there. All the applications will be online. Just more opportunities to do what you need to do through the website. So that's exciting, and that's a major lift for us. Also, and you may have heard me talking about this at commission meetings, but the Texas Facilities Commission, which is basically the state agency that oversees all state property, has approached us with an opportunity to lease different space than this current space. They are building a building at 1501 Lavaca, which is at the corner of 15th or Infield and Lavaca, 2 blocks from here. All the construction in the area now, the hole in the ground, that it's that. And they have approached us to lease space there, and that will be before the commission at the May meeting. I anticipate that they will want to move forward with that, primarily because it will be at a financial savings, and it will also allow us to kind of have more modern space that reflects how we currently work, which is a hybrid environment. Some of us are home, some of us are in the office. So we can downsize some and then share space instead of have so many empty offices. So I think that will be a good thing. And again, we're not buying anything. We're just going to rent different space once it's available. It's about 3 years at the beginning of fiscal year 2028, which will be September 1st of 2027. If all goes well. That's that. Lastly, and I've already mentioned, the May commission meeting, is in Dallas. It will be at the Dallas Marriott in Las Colinas. The commission is committed to doing a meeting kind of on the road every May. So this year, I anticipate that it will mainly be Dallas, Houston, Dallas. But the chair says that maybe one time in El Paso or Van Horn, he says. But for now, we're looking towards Dallas. And so we hope to see a lot of license holders, and would love for y'all to be present to spread the word on that. And of course, you can get CE credit you can, everybody can get CE credit.
Just,
No, it's just the brokers and sales agents.
Yeah.
Should change
Right.
that. Okay, you can do that at this meeting, which is more specific
Yes.
to your well. Okay, forget ever said anything about that. I'm gonna punt to Tony because he has one thing about the TREIC conference.
yeah, I just wanted to touch base since the last time we met. TREIC invites us to attend their conference every year, and we've attended in the past. And Mike Molloy and I went this year. It was on January 18th through the 20th. We have a table set up. We answer a lot of questions. You were there, kind enough to come by and say hi. And we answered a lot of questions from the inspector industry, and we were trying to get people to gravitate towards we have an online version of the SOPs that you pull up on your phone. So we had some QR codes printed up that people took so we could educate people about that option as well. So it went really well. It was a good to get some outreach out to the industry. So just wanted to let you guys know about that.
All right, enforcement, Mr. Malloy.
Tony Renteria, staff attorney and liaison to the inspector committee. We only have 3 orders since the last committee meeting. And if you have any questions about any of those orders, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
One up here, you can just stand and state your name.
Shannon Gatewood. We had our local inspector meeting and we mentioned these, and the question came up on the timeline. Is it date of founding or date of the inspection, the 4-year?
The 4-year is the date of the inspection.
Okay, they were asking and I was like, well, I don't have the.
Yeah, there was one that was closed. That's why you mentioned that. Yeah, we look at the date of the inspection.
Date of inspection. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tony? All right.
One other thing.
Yes, sir. Yep.
We do have an inspector expert witness list that we've had several inspector committee members have been part of for several years now. And we still have several on there that wish to remain as experts. So right now we have Lee, Sean, Stephen. Stephen, recently we contacted him to see if he was still interested or if we needed to replace him.
Okay.
He indicated he wishes to remain, and Mike Morgan. But Scott Reagan, he is no longer available. So we would need to maybe replace him. We don't have a specific amount of experts or a limit or anything like that. So I would just suggest if anybody's interested in volunteering as an inspector expert, to maybe send you an email, because I would like a recommendation from you. And to see if they could serve. The thing to keep in mind is that expert witnesses, they provide their opinion regarding the application of the standards of practice. And as you know, we regularly go to our experts on some difficult questions, and sometimes more than one expert. Some issues are not clear. But if needed, sometimes if a matter, it could be a simple question, an email question, but sometimes it's an issue involving a case. So an expert that volunteers may actually end up testifying in court as an expert witness. So we just want to make that clear. If you do volunteer, it doesn't happen very often, but if it's a case where you provided an opinion and it follows through with a hearing, then you need to have your testimony at a hearing.
And that can happen.
Yeah, it can happen, not very often.
It can happen.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Education and Exams Division.
Good morning. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. The education reports are included in your materials, and Amber's got them up on the screen for us. I don't think you'll find any surprises. Our 2 highest volume months for inspector CE courses so far this year, or fiscal year to date, were December and February. We had 2 new hires that started on our team on April 1st, and they are doing very well in training. We shared with the education subcommittee that EBPHI updated the national portion of the licensing exam to include newer terminology and references, and that was effective on April 1st. There will be a recommendation before you today that addresses the Texas practicum and attempts to define it outside of course requirements and better align with the statutory language for field work. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. That is all I have for you, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, licensing division.
Yeah, good morning. Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. So Amber's pulling up the reports for licensing through February of 24. We're in the process of preparing the data through March. So the first is initial applications received. You'll see inspectors are broken down by rank in the bottom right of that page. So we monitor and compare it to the same period of the previous fiscal year. The next page is different license types. But if we go to the renewal activity, then we can see a breakdown of the inspector renewal activity. And that rate is the renewal rate at the bottom of each of those graphs is what we hone in on. This is a comparison of 2 years prior to the current fiscal year to date, because the licenses renew every 2 years. So we can compare like with like. The next report shows the license and registration counts, and the inspectors are kind of in the center there of that table. And so at the end of February, we had 4,679 total licensed inspectors. The next page is the graphical presentation. And then that last report is the application processing time. So you'll see, again, the inspectors are sort of in the center of that table. And we have a goal of processing applications within 14 days, 14 calendar days. And you'll see we're within that metric for the 3 inspector application types. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Denise?
Yeah, so on this inspector renewal,
Mhm.
it has these percentages, 74, 72.68%. Is that saying only 72% of professional inspectors are renewing?
Yes, that is the rate out of how many are eligible to renew, how many renewed timely. It's a harder number to capture because we open renewals 90 days before the license expiration date, and then you can renew late up to 6 months past the expiration date. So it starts to get a little bit murky to try to calculate and incorporate late renewals. But for the most part, anecdotally, I'll say inspector license holders generally don't really renew late, just as a license holder population. And same with, changing sponsoring inspectors. That's not an activity that's done as often as we see with the other license holders or with the other license types. So that is a pretty consistent number, just for the sake of an item later on the agenda, in case it comes up. I have recently looked at the renewal rates going back to fiscal year 2016. And it's for professional inspectors, 78.19% in fiscal year 2016. That's kind of where the percentages tend to hover. Across all license types, we did see a dip in the renewal rate right as COVID hit in 2020. And they've all kind of rebounded to the similar rates that they were at before.
Okay.
And our numbers are trickling down ever so.
Yeah, the license holder counts are, but the renewal rates have stayed pretty consistent.
I mean, in total numbers, we lost about 10% last year. Good little chunk. But I think we're all kind of seeing some of it going on. All right. Any other questions for Denise? All right, moving on. Item 9, discussion of possible action regarding death of a sponsoring inspector. I'll let Denise talk on this a little bit, but the reason, just some backstory, as on the brokerage side, if you are a broker and you're sponsoring a number of agents, there's certain plans in place and procedures that if that broker passes away, what happens to those agents? Because technically, if that broker is gone, now their agents are inactive. So just wanted to have Denise talk about that on the inspector side. Obviously, it would be utilized or be a much less of an issue, but it's still an issue for some, especially for those that sponsor inspectors. So I just want to make sure we had that
Yeah, happy to walk through that. So as you said, the rule language is pretty clear that upon the death of a sponsoring inspector, the licenses of the inspectors that were sponsored immediately become inactive. In practice, though, even though that's the rule language, in practice, when we're notified in licensing that, something like that has occurred, there's been a sudden death of a sponsoring inspector, we're going to route that to a team lead, to a subject matter expert, and have them reach out to whoever's kind of taking over those matters and would have the documentation and the, generally they've already found someone else who's going to step in as the new sponsoring inspector. So we work with them to get, the paperwork, the forms turned in, and we put them at the top of the stack as far as processing goes to make sure it's, the sponsored inspectors, I keep mixing that up, to make sure that the sponsored inspectors are not negatively impacted for something that they didn't have control over.
Because technically, once that sponsoring inspector goes, none of the people that you sponsor should be doing any inspections whatsoever.
Right.
So.
Right. And it's not a high volume, those requests that we get. So they're not getting cut. They're not cutting in front of a whole lot of other applications, but it's easier to handle those in an expeditious way because it's a lower volume. And then generally speaking, and Mike Malloy could maybe chime in on that, I think it's similar with the real estate licenses, correct? In that there won't be disciplinary action taken if it looked like they did what they needed to do to get a new sponsor. A little bit of a grace
I'm
period.
not gonna put the hammer down. So.
Have you found that the sponsored inspector will stop doing the inspections upon the death? Or is that, because obviously there's going to be a time before the commission finds out about it, that the inspector has died, sponsoring inspector.
I don't know that I have
You don't know that?
that information. I mean,
Or do they just know, say, okay, well, my sponsor is now deceased, so I have to stop? Or do they go, well, it'll be a while before they find out. I have this job coming up. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just.
You don't get a lot of those situations, because you can remember we're complaint driven. So someone would have to file a complaint against an inspector who's inactive doing an inspection. In that particular scenario, I don't think I've ever gotten one.
Okay.
We get the situation where the sponsoring inspector goes and expires. And then the sponsoring inspectors, are inactive.
Right.
And we do get complaints and we do act in that situation. But like I was mentioned previously, I've had cases where the brokers, the sponsoring broker passes away, and we usually get calls from a family member or a sponsored agent. So it's a different setting. It's not a complaint that's being filed. It's like, what do we do in this situation? And we do try to help them.
So they may call and say, can you help me find a sponsor now?
Well, on the broker side, they don't know how to handle it. Because it's kind of complicated. There might be transactions going on. So it is about trying to find someone else to take over the sponsorship. So it does get complicated. But on the inspector side, I think they would just need to find a different sponsor, like Denise was saying, and just fill out the forms and try to expedite things. You want to kind of get it done as soon as possible.
Sure.
So I think as a sponsored inspector, it's a good idea, and I think just a good business practice to really keep up with who your sponsor is. Make sure they're renewing their license like they're supposed to, because they control your fate as it stands. But as the sponsoring inspector, it might not be a bad idea to have a plan of action, somebody to fall back on just in case, make an agreement with another colleague that is willing to sponsor inspectors or already sponsors inspectors. Hey, if something happens to me, if I go on a trip and something happens, you can take that over and kind of put that plan in place. But just part of business planning, because again, technically, if that sponsoring inspector goes or passes, everything else has to stop. So, okay. What was it? Just want to bring that up. Item number 10, discussion possible action regarding amendments to 22 TAC 535-209, 535-213, and 535-214 related to the Texas practicum.
I'll start this one off. It sounds like a lot. It's not really. The current references to the Texas practicum are contained in the areas of the rule that cover qualifying course requirements. According to the statute and all requirements related to the Texas practicum, we know that this is a field experience requirement. Staff has reviewed the rule language and has some recommended changes that have no substantial impact other than to pull out the language related to the practicum and move it so that it is more clearly an experience requirement. The Education Subcommittee considered this, recommended it to come forward to this committee for consideration. Until now, education providers have been able to submit a course application for the 40-hour Texas practicum and issue course completion certificates to students. This change would require all applicants to use the practicum credit request form. Education providers could still offer the practicum, but it wouldn't be through the course approval program. They could hire or employ a qualified inspector to lead the practicums. It's important, I feel like, to distinguish this as an experience requirement, which would also eliminate any confusion as to whether or not this can be done virtually by nature of the terminology classroom or distance education associated with course delivery. That doesn't mean that this committee couldn't consider that. It's just separating it, defining it as a field requirement, which is what it was intended to do. So that is what the language before you represents. It's pulling it out of the course approval language and giving it its own space.
You're not changing it. You're just taking that information out of one spot, putting it into another, just so it's clearly.
That's exactly right.
Anybody have any questions on that? I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
For a second. Any other discussion regarding this proposal to, proposal for approval?
For,
Recommendations to the commission.
Recommendation.
Because it'll be recommended.
Yes, I know it's not us approving, we're proposing it to them. Okay. Right.
And
Any other,
we'll get comments once it's
Yeah.
been, yeah.
any other discussion? Great, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, no. Item number 11, discussion of possible action regarding recommendations for the 2025 legislative session.
So if you recall last time we gathered, we talked about a couple of things that the committee already recommended moving forward with apprentice education. That's still moving forward as a recommendation from the committee. How was it? 4 hours, right, Jen? 4
Yes.
hours? Okay. The other item that was to be discussed by the education subcommittee was the elimination of the real estate inspector license type, that middle tier. And after a lot of discussion in that meeting and based on kind of where the agency is now in terms of implementing a new database and everything, the subcommittee, and I'll let the subcommittee members, the chair talk about it if he wants to, are recommending holding off on that particular legislative change as of right now and waiting till the next, bring it up possibly for the next session.
Is it just that it just be too cumbersome to do it at this point, or?
Well, there's a number of things. There's a lot going on in terms of it's already being built into the new database since the license, and I can Denise can speak to this too, but since that license type is going to be the way that legislation was drafted in the past, would still be something that there'd still be real estate inspector license types. They just wouldn't be accepting new applications. It's already built into the system to accept those. So it wouldn't really change much in terms of the processing on staff goes. One of the things considered in the past was removing some of the complexity for staff as well as for the industry, and that complexity, I'm not talking about the time to implement a new database and all that. That's still on the table, but in terms of processing these going forward, that complexity is not something that necessarily goes away because it's already being built into the current database system. So it's because it's kind of a couple of things. It may not be quite the issue that in the past people thought it was at that time. And so, and again, I'll let the chair speak to it if he wants to, but the thought was there's, it's working right now. No reason to add complexity to something to do this if there's no real genuine reason to be going forward with that. So.
Yeah, we really didn't see a benefit to it. I mean, I personally have all my inspectors licensed real estate inspectors. To me, it's beneficial to have that level.
Because you don't have to have the direct supervision.
Yeah, and gives me a little more control over inspectors not being professionals, and it's easier to get them into that. And the Denise and all, I think it was who in the meeting said that, there's really no benefit to the people, correct, to do it. So we just didn't see any benefits to it. Just recommended leaving it alone.
Okay. So we're basically looking at leaving it alone, but still looking at adding education to become an apprentice.
Yes, sir. So the 4 hours with that's moving forward as a legislative recommendation from the committee. This is being brought forward to see if so the subcommittee could recommend it and see if the committee had any issues or thoughts of wanting to do something different from that. So.
I mean, I don't sponsor inspections, so it's 6 one way, half dozen the other to me. I mean, the whole point of why we were looking at it before was it's those 2 licenses are so underutilized in comparison to the professional. Is it really a pain in the keister to have another one there? But if it isn't, and it's already being built in to that, I don't really see it. If it's not hurting the agency or hurting us as an industry, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Everybody's quiet today. All right. Request for future meeting agenda items. Anybody have any items they would like to see on a future agenda? It really is quiet.
Lee,
Yes, sir.
I'm not adding it. I just wanted, just for the committee's sake, as the SOP review starts happening, usually the way that process works is the chair of the subcommittee will bring, once a specific section's closed, we'll bring that to the full committee to kind of vote on it so we can put it aside. That doesn't mean you can't add stuff later or the people can't continue to bring concerns up, but it's just a process in place. So the reason I'm bringing that up is those sections as this review gets will likely be put on this future agenda.
Correct. And then keep in mind, if we have, I'll come right to it. If we have anything that comes up in between now and that next meeting, just send it to myself, Tony, Chelsea, Vanessa. If you have a suggestion for that, we can throw that on the agenda as long as it's 10 days it has to go out. The agenda has to go out 10 days before the meeting for the Open Meetings Act. So just doesn't have to be done now, but we always put that on the agenda in case somebody has something right to do. Yes, sir.
Back to the legislative session for next year. What if we have any ideas, suggestions, proposals we want the legislator to look at that involves us?
Yeah, I mean, you could bring those up. Do you have any?
Well, just to start a discussion.
There's, everything's got a sort of a timeline to it.
Right.
And really to get, if there is any sort of anything necessary to move forward on, that discussion probably needs to happen before the summer.
Right.
Because we need to, the agency's got to look at drafting legislation, figuring out who would be a sponsor, talking to the industry and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in that. So obviously the sooner any of those conversations can have, the better it would be.
But, just to add on to what you're saying, it kind of depends on in what capacity you're talking about. If you as an inspector would like to go to your member of the legislature and seek changes, then you're always welcome to do that on behalf of yourself.
Of course.
If you are looking for changes for the industry on behalf of the committee, then like Tony said, there's a vetting process and it needs to be like, we're not in a position as an agency to lobby or to seek changes for the sake of change. This is kind of just a nuance, but we can help educate members of the legislature on the impact of a change. So when we bring changes to the legislature, it's like operational changes, or it can't be with a opinion, if that makes any sense. A lot of our stuff goes through like if there's an association that does have an opinion, then they'll take it.
Oh, yeah, we do that with Texas Association of Builders all the time.
That's right. So there's some navigating and it kind of depends on what it is. But I just wanted to say that out loud because of course you're always.
Well, let me just throw out what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
This came up at the last meeting that we had, because you remember it comes up all the time about how builders are requiring inspectors that are performing for a third party for a home buyer to have $1 million insurance policy, right? Okay. Builders can set insurance requirements for their subcontractors all day long into their property. But if there's somehow we could look at maybe where it would be prohibitive for a property owner, which a builder would fall under, to ask for any insurance limits beyond what the state is already requiring to be licensed, just by saying, you cannot come on my property unless you have $1 million insurance policy. But the state's only requiring me to have $100,000. So as a homeowner, because I'm licensed by the state, you can't prevent me from stepping onto your property and performing an inspection.
Well, and keep in mind, the state insurance requirements for E&O, not general liability. The builders require general liability.
Yeah, that's correct. That is correct. Yeah.
And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. What you're talking about sounds much more like something the trade association would handle in terms of trying to, we've had similar things on the appraiser side where they've talked about, putting limitations on liability requirements and stuff like that. As a regulatory entity, I don't know if what you're talking about would really fall into place.
Okay.
You would not, I don't think you would have a shortage of inspectors willing to be, sign on that to help, get something of that moving. So
and just one more sort of stage in what this committee does in terms of the process is you'd make recommendations. They'd still have to go for the commission to determine whether the commission wanted to move forward on any sort of legislative changes as well. So that's just an extra step. That's why the timing of it needs to be fairly, if the committee were to recommend something soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine for us, our company. We carry that limit anyway, but just, I know it comes up from time to time.
Yeah. Well, it's not
just to try to help other inspectors.
That's the insurance requirement is one of them. There's multiple different builders. They do
They're
different
just
things.
trying to keep us off.
Oh, I understand. When they ask us, they go, oh, well, your inspector has to have that. Okay, no problem. Here it is. They go, dang, they got it.
Yeah. Raise the limit.
From a public member at large, though, I don't think it's a bad idea if all the inspectors had $1 million of CGL coverage, but that's not for the reason you're talking about. They're trying to keep you off the job. But from a consumer, I want everybody to have lots of insurance in case somebody gets hurt or something happens.
Yeah.
on the
Well, most
project.
inspectors will. I think most inspectors do.
But I don't know that it's most.
But this ends up being, well, we want to be an additional insured on the property. You can never go on the roof there's all.
Oh, yeah, I know. You got to sign bill, all that stuff, agreements. Yeah, you're basically treated like a subcontractor.
Right.
Well, DR Horton even wants you to sign a paper saying you'll forward them a copy of the inspection report. So when I send it, I pull out the verbiage in the administrative code that says I can't send it to them and tell the realtor and the buyer if you want them to have it, forward it to them.
There's all sorts. There's one that says if you die, even through the gross negligence of the builder, you're waiving all rights to hold them responsible. It's just,
they just don't want us
all
on their
shapes and sizes.
property and they're just doing everything they can to get us off their property.
Yeah. So we just do this we can.
Because
I don't think we
perfect houses and then I'll tell you what's wrong.
I'd like us to be able to do something. I just don't think as an agent.
I have been on that side. I get it.
Does seem like an association
Yeah.
item, though, if that's,
All right.
and it sounds like it's a popular item.
Oh, very.
So.
Yeah. It's a hot topic.
Yeah, that's a big hot topic right now.
Any other future meeting agenda items? All right, then we will look at discussion possible action regarding future meeting dates. We have tentatively July 15th as for our next one. Everybody okay with July 15th?
I asked for an exception ahead of time. I will be backpacking in Belmont with my son, so I will have no cell signal or anything else.
Oh,
Bring it early.
At least you aren't going to be late. So.
Nope, I will simply be gone.
All right, but still do, if you could, first off, does anybody else have a conflict with July 15th? Okay. So
I'll get my reports and everything because we've already worked it through on SOP.
Yeah, if you can delegate somebody to provide your report at the next meeting, that'd be fine. All right, so we'll set that one for July 15th. We're also looking at October 14th and January 21st. We don't have to nail those into stone, but if anybody has definite issues with those, we can look at that now.
Tell me the dates again.
October 14th and January 21st.
Shutdown day.
No, the agency's open on clubs.
Yep.
But this committee's met a lot on Columbus Day in the past, actually.
Yes, that is a very popular
Tradition, if you
meeting, yeah.
So I won't be in town on the 14th
October,
of October.
January 21st.
Oh, but I can join by Zoom, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We'll make sure you have the link.
So January 21st, that's a Tuesday. That one I will not be here.
It's also mentioning this, that's the January is the time that you elect officers.
He's gone at your own peril.
I don't know if I want to miss that one. I'll get looped into being the chair again. Ugh.
You can move that date.
Yeah.
Also think about it, it's January. so.
Yeah, there's plenty of time.
Okay. I mean, that following week I have wide open. I'll be gone that whole week.
Where are you gonna? I'm just.
Don't start. Don't start. Stop. Haters gonna hate. What about the 27th?
27 works for me.
January,
27th January?
Is that too late?
on that Monday?
Or the 13th.
I mean,
So
I don't have anything on my calendar yet, so.
we need to have enough time before the commission meeting, so
Is it 22nd or 23rd work? We're looking at timing for our, the whole week.
yeah.
We could go
That's fine. I
early.
can do it without me. I just won't be able
Did we
to.
do the 13th?
I'm actually going that week too.
I'm just saying, I'm out because I had already scheduled meetings around that week of the 20th.
So you're out the week of the 20th also?
No, I had
Oh,
blocked the week of the
before,
20th
okay.
off just so I would make sure I was at the meeting.
So we can leave it at the 21st. I just,
You could also think of that earlier. A week earlier.
do the 6th or 7th.
January 6th is a great day for me.
We've got ESAC, I think, that day.
What, well, I just have a recommendation, because I mean, it sounds like there's some conflicts people need to work some out. Brian's already set aside, so do we want to just look at some dates or do the survey thing that you do?
Yes.
See if
I mean,
there's-
it's
Yeah.
9 months away. We got plenty of time,
Yeah.
so, okay, yeah, we can look at that. Cool. Send out a survey, see what dates, time, set priority dates for everybody.
Could we look at the balance of 25 while we're at it selfishly?
The rest of the year?
Yes, because my calendar's booking well into 25 already, so the sooner I can get dates locked up, the better I'll personally be.
I figure we probably, April 14th is probably gonna be that. The next one, it's usually the middle of April.
Yeah, it's typically always the third Monday,
Okay, that'd be the 21st.
so.
That'd be good. 14th doesn't work.
We can send the,
Yeah, I've already got that on my calendar, so that's good.
And I mean, these are all gonna be like, at this point,
Tentative.
tentative,
Yep.
okay? Because my daughter will be a senior next year, so I don't know what all, in
Oh, yeah, yeah,
2025, we're gonna be.
Yep.
Sure.
I don't think Mondays are gonna be anything crazy though, but I don't know.
The only time we really kind of set that hard date is at the meeting right before to make sure.
I think, yeah, but I think Brian has said that for him, it works if we can plan out.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if they're tentative, just so I know what week or generally I'm blocking out, so
So it's typically that third Monday.
and that's what I had for the April one, was already blocked in 25. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so the two we have set are July 15th and October 14th, right? Everybody's good with that one except your contact.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I believe it's that, and then we'll get a survey on the other ones for 2025 for the first and second. All right. Unless anybody has anything else, we'll call the meeting adjourned at 10:44 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for joining online.
Thank you for hearing me.